I was kicked out by the very people who once said they'd love me no matter what. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come with screams. Sometimes it comes with silence, with a slammed door, with the echo of someone walking away and not turning back. The day it happened, I was sitting alone in a small, rented room. 4 walls, a mattress on the floor, and a suitcase half open. No photos on the wall, no family calls. Just a girl who used to believe that obedience meant safety. I remember sitting there, hugging my knees, and hearing again and again the phrases that had haunted me for weeks. If you don't believe anymore, you don't belong here. We love you, but we love Jehovah more. Your doubts are Satan's whispers. They echoed in my mind like ghosts. That day, I pressed record on my phone. I didn't know if I'd ever publish that video. I didn't even know if I'd have the courage to watch it again. I just needed to speak, to say it out loud, to take the pain that was eating me from the inside and give it a voice. So I began. My name is not important right now. What matters is what I lived through. I was a Jehovah's Witness my whole life, until I wasn't, and for that, I lost everything. The tears didn't come at first. I was too tired, too numb. But my voice trembled, and I knew deep down that telling this story wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who had ever been made to feel like love should come with conditions. That moment, sitting in that dim room, with a phone balanced on a stack of books, was the beginning of something I didn't yet understand. A kind of freedom that tasted like ashes at first. A kind of rebirth that came with morning dawn. I was 19. I was alone. But for the first time, I was truly mine. I was born into a world where God was everywhere, watching, judging, expecting. My earliest memories are not of cartoons or birthday parties. They're of meetings, of long hours sitting still in plastic chairs, flipping through Bible verses I couldn't yet read. I remember my first Kingdom Hall meeting. I was wearing a dress I didn't like, my hair pulled tight into a bun. I must have been 5, maybe 6. I didn't understand half of what was being said, but I knew. It was serious. I knew we had to behave. I knew Jehovah was watching always. From a very young age, I was taught that goodness wasn't a feeling. It was an action. It was submission. It was not questioning. It was obedience. When I made a mistake, I didn't just fear punishment from my parents. I feared losing God's approval. I believed that one bad thought could lead to death at Armageddon. That if I didn't pray properly, Jehovah might withdraw his love from me. Can you imagine being a child and feeling responsible for your family's salvation? That's what it was like. If I didn't behave at the meeting, maybe Jehovah would be disappointed. If I didn't speak up in the field ministry, maybe I wasn't worthy. I remember once I lied about brushing my teeth. Just a silly little lie, but that night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if Jehovah had written my name down on some list of the condemned. I prayed over and over, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I'll never lie again. I was 7. Childhood, for me, wasn't about play. It was about preparation. Preparation for a world that would end soon, for judgment. For the test of loyalty, birthdays were wrong, Christmas was pagan. School friends were worldly and dangerous. Television had to be filtered, music had to be approved. And I had to be vigilant all the time. But underneath the obedience, there were dreams I couldn't speak aloud. I wanted to dance. I wanted to paint. I wanted to try on lipstick in the mirror and imagine what it would be like to be a normal girl. Walking down a mall with her friends. Instead, I learned how to go door to door, how to smile and recite scriptures, how to keep secrets, because even as a child, I knew some parts of me weren't welcome in this version of God's house. As I grew into adolescence, the rules didn't loosen, they multiplied. By then, I already knew the routine by heart. Wake up early for theocratic activities, go to school but never get too close to anyone, study Watchtower articles in the evening, attend every meeting, go out in field service on weekends, repeat, always repeat. There was no time for questioning, only time for performing. My clothes were monitored. Skirts had to be a certain length. Shirts couldn't show too much. Makeup, not unless it was subtle and appropriate. Friendships, only within the congregation, and even then, only with those who were spiritually strong. I remember being praised often. She's such a good girl, always obedient, so mature for her age. Those words were supposed to make me proud, but they made me feel hollow because they weren't praising me. They were praising the mask I wore so well. I was taught that being in the truth meant sacrificing everything that didn't serve Jehovah. That included dreams, desires, personal goals. Higher education was frowned upon, a distraction, dating, only with the intention of marriage, and only within the faith. At 15, I was already being asked if I had spiritual goals. That meant pioneering. That meant giving more hours to the ministry. That meant being an example. Always an example. And yet I remember nights lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering, is this really it? Is this what the rest of my life will be? But I pushed those thoughts away. I had to, because doubting wasn't just dangerous, it was sinful. And besides, I had everything I was supposed to want: a loving family, a congregation that respected me, a future mapped out in service to Jehovah. But deep inside, something was missing. I was loved for being obedient, not for being me. The real me, the one who sometimes wanted to sleep in on Sundays, who liked music that wasn't theocratic, who dreamed of studying psychology or maybe writing. That version of me had no place. Still, I tried to silence her. I worked harder. I studied more. I commented at meetings with enthusiasm. I said all the right things, but no matter how perfectly I played the role, I couldn't shake the feeling that the love around me was conditional. If I ever stopped being the good girl, would they still love me? I wasn't sure. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a dramatic moment where I declared I no longer believed. No big confrontation. Just questions. Quiet, persistent questions that started whispering to me in the middle of otherwise ordinary days. It began when someone from our congregation was disfellowshipped. They were there 1 week, gone the next. No explanation, just silence. And we were told, don't ask, don't talk. Jehovah will handle it. But I wanted to ask. I needed to know. What had they done? Were they okay? How could someone be erased so completely? I started to notice how often fear was used to keep us quiet. Fear of the world. Fear of outsiders. Fear of ourselves. One evening, I had a conversation with a girl who had left the congregation a year earlier. We weren't supposed to talk to her, but I saw her at the library and couldn't help myself. She didn't look like someone possessed by Satan. She looked free, tired maybe, but real. She told me in a low voice, leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the first decision I made for myself. Her words stayed with me. That night, I found myself searching online, secretly, carefully. I cleared my browser. History after every page. I read stories from people who had left. Some bitter, some heartbroken, some still trying to make peace with it all. One of them said, I thought leaving meant losing everything. But I didn't realize I had nothing if I wasn't allowed to be myself. That sentence cut deep. Then came the guilt. I would pray twice as hard after reading something apostate. I'd beg Jehovah to forgive me for being curious. I'd cry, convinced that I had disappointed him, that I was endangering my family, that I was opening a door to darkness. But even through the guilt, a new feeling began to grow. Not rebellion, not anger. Just freedom. I started thinking differently during meetings. I questioned the Watchtower articles. I wondered why women couldn't have authority. Why disfellowshipped ones had to be treated like they were dead. Why we were told not to think too much. Began journaling in secret, something I'd never dared to do before. I wrote down questions I wasn't allowed to ask. Feelings I wasn't allowed to express. And through those pages, I met a part of myself I'd never known. A brave part, a curious part, a real part I wasn't trying to leave. Not yet. I just wanted to understand, but I was beginning to see that. Understanding was dangerous in a world built on unquestioned obedience. It didn't take long for people to notice at first. It was just subtle things. A look from my mother when I was quiet during family study, or a raised eyebrow from one of the elders when I gave shorter, less enthusiastic answers at the meetings. But then the questions started. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" My mom asked one night after dinner. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the plate. "You've been distant," she said. "You don't comment as much. You're always reading alone." I wanted to say, "I'm thinking," but instead I said, "I'm tired." She didn't believe me. I could tell. Not long after, my father sat me down for what he called a spiritual check-in. "There's something going on with you," he said. "Your mother and I can feel it." I stayed silent. "Is someone influencing you? Have you been reading something you shouldn't?" I hesitated for a second too long. "You have, haven't you?" I looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not for me, but of me. He was afraid of what I was becoming. "This isn't you," he said. "This is the devil trying to confuse your heart." That phrase haunted me. The devil. Suddenly, my questions weren't just questions, they were seen as spiritual attacks. The more I tried to explain, the more I felt like I was speaking a language they couldn't hear. "I still believe in God," I said one night, almost in tears. "But I don't know if I believe in everything else." My mother froze. Her voice became flat. "You don't get to pick and choose what to believe. It's all or nothing." I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. The warmth was gone. The small conversations, the shared jokes, all replaced with suspicion, silence, side glances. I tried to be normal again. I tried to comment during meetings. I forced myself to read the publications with a smile. But it was too late. They no longer saw me as faithful. They saw me as dangerous. Even my siblings started avoiding me. Not overtly, just less eye contact, less affection. Like they sensed that whatever I had might be contagious. I was alone, and yet surrounded. And the worst part wasn't the coldness. It was realizing that their love had limits. It was just another afternoon. The sun was setting, and the house had that warm smell of soup on the stove. It felt like an ordinary day. But at WSN single quotes tea, my mother called me into the living room. My father was already there, arms crossed, seated on the edge of the couch. The air was heavy before a word was spoken. I sat down, shaking inside. She was the first to speak. "We can't go on like this. This isn't the daughter we raised." I tried to keep calm. "I'm still me. I just have questions." My father interrupted. "Questions are rebellion? Because you can't serve Jehovah and doubt his organization at the same time." I replied, my voice low. "What if it's not him who's failing? What if it's the men who are wrong?" That was the breaking point. I saw it in my mother's eyes. Tears welling up, not of sadness, but disappointment, shame. She stood up, walked a few steps, then turned to me with a firmness I'd never seen in her. "As long as you live under this roof, you'll follow the rules of this house. That includes serving Jehovah as you always have." I went silent. Not because I didn't have words, I had used them all. In my head, in prayers, in failed attempts to explain myself. I was drained, Then she continued, "But if you're going to keep feeding these doubts, if you're going to bring worldly ideas into this home, then you'll need to find somewhere else to live." She didn't shout. She said it calmly. And that hurt more. It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. I wanted to beg, to say I'd be quiet, I wouldn't bring it up again. But something inside me, something buried for years, rose up. "So your love depends on what I believe?" My mother didn't answer. My father stood up, looked me straight in the eyes. "What we believe is who we are. If you're no longer part of it, then you're no longer part of us." And just like that, I ceased to be a daughter. I ceased to belong. I ceased to be their own. There were no hugs, no shared tears, just a silent command. "Pack your things." I went upstairs. Every step felt like a farewell. I entered my room, closed the door, and felt like the walls were collapsing in on me. I sat on the bed, hands trembling. I looked around at the books, the photos, the mirror where I used to comb my hair every Sunday. Everything looked like it belonged to a life that was ending. I grabbed an old suitcase, started packing what I needed. Clothes, documents, a few. Pictures, though I knew even those images would start to hurt. I heard my sister crying quietly in the room next door. I didn't say goodbye. When I came back down, my parents were standing in the kitchen. They didn't say a word, just looked at me. I looked back one last time. No one walked me to the door. No one offered help. No one said, "Take care." I crossed the threshold with a suitcase in hand and a shattered soul. And just like that, it was over. I walked out without looking back. The suitcase didn't weigh nearly as much as the silence. Trailing behind me, it was Sunday. The street was empty, as if the whole world had stepped aside to let me carry my shame alone. I walked to the bus stop with my eyes full of tears I refused to let fall. I knew that if I started crying there, I might never stop. I had the number of a friend scribbled on a piece of paper, hidden for weeks inside my Bible notebook. I texted her, "Can I stay at your place tonight?" I left. She replied instantly, "Come, I'm here." I waited at the bus stop, sitting on a rusty bench. People walked past me with no idea that I had just lost everything, or maybe I was just beginning, but it didn't feel like a beginning. It felt like a death. I got on the bus, sat by the window. The glass was cold. I pressed my forehead against it, trying to quiet the fever burning inside. The city passed by in a blur as my mind repeated over and over, "This is temporary. You'll be okay. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry." When I arrived, my friend was waiting outside. She hugged me tight without asking questions. That hug was the first I'd received in a long time without conditions. I nearly collapsed in her arms, but I held back. I didn't want to seem weak. Her house was small, cozy, filled with the smell of fresh food and laughter from the living room. Her family welcomed me respectfully but cautiously. They knew what my presence meant. They knew that, to many, I was now unwanted. I slept on a mattress on the floor beside her bed. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. I thought about my mother, what she felt watching me walk out, whether she regretted it, whether she cried. I imagined my little sister waking up and asking where I was. My father pouring Monday's coffee with no cup left for me. And then it came. The anxiety, that dense wave that squeezes your chest from the inside. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I went outside to the yard, sat on the cold ground, hugging my knees. I looked up at the sky and felt like the loneliest person in the universe. I thought about disappearing, about no longer feeling anything. But then a quiet voice inside me whispered, "Not now, not like this." I went back inside as the sun was rising. My friend was asleep. I lay on the mattress and closed my eyes for the first time that night. A new day was starting, and I was no longer the same. I woke up to the sounds of someone else's house, clinking dishes in the kitchen, soft footsteps, a TV murmuring in the distance. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered I wasn't home. I didn't have a home. My friend knocked softly on the door and came in with a cup of coffee. She smiled like she knew I couldn't speak yet. She sat on the edge of the mattress, gently touched my shoulder, and said, "You're safe here." Safe, but from what? I had no house, no family, no plan. I showered with a borrowed towel, put on borrowed clothes. Looking in the mirror felt strange. It was me, but not a stripped version of me. No congregation smile, no modest dress, just a tired girl with empty eyes. I tried to help around the house. I washed dishes, swept the floor. Her parents were kind, but I could feel their discomfort. I was a guest. A problem they were too kind to name. And I couldn't stay forever. That evening, she took me to her church. A place so unlike everything I'd known: music, clapping, children laughing in the aisles. I didn't understand it, but I felt something. Maybe not faith, but relief. Or maybe just space to breathe. Still, I didn't sleep well. The next day, I started looking for a place to stay. Cheap boarding houses, rented rooms. I remembered a former congregation sister who had also been disfellowshipped years ago. I texted her, not expecting much, but she answered, kindly, calmly. "It's small, but there's a mattress in the back room. You can stay." I packed my few things again, took another bus, walked into another unknown hallway. Her apartment was tiny, humble, but it had warmth, a lived-in smell, a shared pain. That night, I lay on a thin mattress on a cold tile floor. No prayers before bed. No goodnight from my parents. No routine. No structure. Just me. The silence was loud. The darkness didn't scare me, but my own thoughts did. I tried not to cry, but the tears came anyway. Quiet, hot, relentless. I thought about calling my mom, about apologizing, about begging to come back. But something inside me, fragile but stubborn, whispered, "You can't lie to yourself anymore." I hugged the pillow, shaking, not from cold, but from everything I was holding in. I didn't want my host to hear me cry out. It was the loneliest night of my life, but somewhere in that deep ache, there was a flicker of something else. Not hope. Not yet. Just the faint beginning of knowing I had survived another day. Starting over sounds romantic until you actually do it. There's nothing poetic about waking up on a borrowed mattress, putting on secondhand clothes, and wondering how you'll pay for food, or where you'll get money for soap, or how long your host will tolerate you staying. But I had to do something. One morning, I took a deep breath, tied my hair back, and left with a small cooler full of handmade chocolate truffles. A friend of my host taught me the recipe and helped me buy the ingredients with some money she had left over from her own sales. "People love sweets," she said. "It's not much, but it's a start." And so I walked. Corner to corner, door to door. "Good morning. Would you like to try a truffle?" I made them myself. Some people were kind. Others ignored me. Some smiled with pity. Others asked too many questions. The first time I sold one, I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. First time I was rejected 10 times in a row. I cried in the bathroom of a small cafe, but I kept going. Every night I counted coins like they were treasures. Some days I made enough to buy bread and fruit. Some days I didn't. I ate little, slept less. I was always tired, always tense, but something strange happened. For the first time, what I earned came from my own effort. It wasn't preaching for hours and waiting for Jehovah to bless me. It wasn't serving others and being told to wait for my reward in paradise. This was my sweat, My effort, my survival. Little by little, I saved enough to rent a tiny room behind someone's house. The kind of place no one dreams of: peeling walls, a single window, and a mattress on the floor. But it was mine. I remember cleaning it with tears in my eyes, wiping the dust, laying down a thin blanket, hanging a small light. There was no furniture, no curtains, no fridge, but there was silence. There was freedom. And for the first time in weeks, I stood in the middle of that little room and whispered, I'm still here. No matter how much I'd lost, I was still here, and that meant something. They say time heals everything, but they don't tell you what to do with the silence in between. My first birthday outside the congregation came just 2 months after I left. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post about it. I didn't expect anything, but when the day arrived, I woke up with a lump in my throat. For years, birthdays meant nothing. They weren't allowed. They were labeled as pagan, worldly, sinful. But deep inside, a small part of me always wanted to be celebrated. Just once, just to hear someone say, I'm glad you were born. That morning, I sat on the edge of my mattress and cried, not because I expected balloons or cake, but because I knew my mother wouldn't call, my siblings wouldn't text, my name wouldn't be spoken in that house. I tried to distract myself, went out to sell sweets, smiled at strangers. But every corner of the city reminded me of them. At night, I lit a small candle and stuck it in a piece of bread. I closed my eyes and made a silent wish. I wish they could see me. I wish I could matter without believing everything they do. That candle burned for just a few minutes, but it lit something deeper inside me. Still, nothing prepares you for holidays. First came the memorial. That night, I stayed home while I knew the Kingdom Hall would be full. I imagined my family dressed in their best clothes, sitting in silence, passing the bread and wine. I imagined them looking at the empty seat where I used to be. Then came the year-end holidays, the ones we never celebrated, but that now felt different. I saw families decorating trees. I watched children laughing in parks with sauna hats. I passed store windows full of lights and warm colors, and for the first time, I wanted to belong to that world. Not because of gifts, but because those people, strangers, seemed to have something I had lost: each other. I spent most of those days in silence, cooking small meals for myself, watching old movies, writing in my journal. I tried texting my mom once. Just a simple message. Hi, I miss you. I'm okay. She never replied. Later, I saw she had blocked me. I found my brother's Instagram. He had grown so much. In one photo, he smiled holding a trophy. I wasn't there to clap. I wasn't there to hug him. I cried like a child, because that's what I had become: a daughter without a mother, a sister with no siblings. And I remember thinking the religion took them away from me, but left me alive to watch it happen. That was the cruelest part, not being forgotten, but remembering everything. I was at my lowest the day. I couldn't get out of bed, not because I was sick, but because I felt like I no longer had a reason to stand up. The world outside seemed too big, my room too small, my body too heavy. I stared at the ceiling, letting the hours pass without moving. Even my breathing felt like a burden. I didn't want to die, but I didn't know how to live. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a girl I barely knew, someone I had met once during a truffle sale. She had looked at me back then and said, "You remind me of someone." Now, weeks later, her message read, "Hey, I don't know if this helps, but I went through something like you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I hesitated. My pride said no, but my loneliness, my need, said yes. We met for coffee in a quiet place. She told me her story, how she had left a controlling religion, how her family had turned their backs on her, how she had rebuilt her life piece by piece. She didn't offer magic solutions. She didn't pretend to be healed, but she was standing, breathing, laughing, living, and that gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. She told me about a support group, people like us, people with scars, people trying. She told me about a free therapy program at a nonprofit clinic. You can go once a week, no judgment. Just someone who listens. The next Monday I went. The waiting room was small. The couch was worn. The walls were pale. But when the therapist looked at me and said, "You're safe here, and you matter," I broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried in months. I told my story. All of it, and for the first time, I wasn't met with silence or scriptures or fear. I was met with compassion. That day, I made a promise to myself. If no one's going to take care of me, I will. It wasn't strength. Not yet, it was survival, but it was mine, and it was enough to start. Healing wasn't a straight line. It came in tiny, awkward steps. After months of therapy, I started to believe, just a little, that I deserved more than survival. That maybe I could rebuild something. Not the life I had before, but something new. I signed up for a free vocational course. It was a technical certification in a field I barely understood, but it was something. I was accepted with a scholarship, and on the first day, I almost turned back at the door. I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like a fraud, like a lost girl pretending to be a woman with plans, but I went in anyway. I sat in the last row, notebook in hand, heart racing. When the teacher started talking, I didn't understand half of it, but I stayed. The next day, I came back, and the day after that, I studied at night. Sold truffles in the morning, spent afternoons in class. It was exhausting, but for the first time, I felt proud. Not because I was being praised, not because I was earning approval, but because I was moving, even if slowly. I began to treat myself with more care, bought a mirror for my room, painted the walls light yellow, started making breakfast every morning, even if it was just toast and coffee. I created routines, not out of obligation, but out of self-respect. I looked at myself differently, not as someone broken, but as someone rebuilding. I wasn't healed. I still had bad days. Days when I missed my mom so much it hurt to breathe. Days when I wondered if I'd made a mistake, but I also had new days, like the day I passed my first exam, like the first time I bought something for myself, a pair of sneakers, paid with my own money, like the evening I looked in the mirror and whispered, "I love you." It felt strange at first, but not wrong. I wasn't trying to replace the love I lost. I was learning to give myself the love I never received. And in that quiet, unglamorous process, I started to come alive. Some wounds close. Others stay open quietly, even after rebuilding. Parts of my life, I carried scars that still ached when touched. There were days when a smell like my mother's perfume would hit me in the street, and I'd have to sit down to breathe. Or nights when a dream of my siblings laughing would wake me up with tears in my eyes. Healing didn't erase the love. I still felt. It just taught me to live with the absence. There were moments when I almost went back. Not because I believed again, but because I was tired. Tired of being alone. Tired of trying. Tired of missing people who didn't miss me. I went through periods of silence with myself. Stopped therapy for a while. Avoided the mirror again. But something had changed. I no longer saw returning to the old life as salvation. I saw it as surrender, and I couldn't do that to myself again. I started writing letters I never sent. To my mother. To my father. To the girl I once was. I told them the truth. That I was still hurting, but that I wasn't broken. That I still loved them, but I chose to love myself too. Some days, that was enough. Other days it wasn't. But that's what healing is. Not perfection. Not forgetting. Just walking, even with a limp. And that I was learning to do. If you're watching this and your world is falling apart, if you're afraid, confused, rejected, and alone, this is for you. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not unworthy. You are someone who is waking up in a world that no longer fits you. And that's terrifying. I know what it's like to question everything you were taught, to feel guilty just for thinking, to lose people who once said they'd never leave. And I know what it's like to feel like you've lost yourself along the way. But listen to me. There is life after the fall. There is love beyond your family's silence. There is strength in your tears. There is dignity in your doubt. You don't have to have all the answers today. You just need to keep breathing, to take one more step, to find one more safe place, to say one more honest thing. You are not alone. I thought I was. For months, I thought I was the only one carrying this pain, but there are others. People like you, people like me. We exist. We're healing. We're rebuilding, and we're waiting for you. Don't let shame silence you. Don't let fear freeze you. Don't let the loss of others cost you the love you owe yourself. You are strong, even when no one sees it. Even when you don't feel it, you are not the doubts they tried to shut down. You are not the label they gave you. You are not the disappointment they projected. You are something new, and that is beautiful. Sometimes I still write letters in my head. Letters I'll never send, like this one to my mother. Mom, if you ever see this, know that I never stopped loving you. But I had to start loving myself too. I waited for you every birthday, every holiday, every silence. I still remember your voice, your hands, your laugh. But I couldn't keep waiting for someone who only loved me under conditions. I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy. And I hope deep down, you know, that I didn't leave you. I left the fear. Sometimes I imagine her listening to that. I don't know if she'd cry or if she'd turn off the screen, but I know this. I'm no longer the girl begging to be accepted. I'm a woman with scars, but also with strength. Woman who had to bury a version of herself to be reborn. Today, I walk freely, not because I no longer feel pain, but because I chose not to let that pain define me. My freedom is not clean, not perfect, not painless, but it's real. It came with nights on the floor, with hunger, with grief, with silence, but it also came with courage. And if I had to choose again, even knowing everything I lost, I'd still choose to walk out that door. Because today, when I breathe, it's for me. When I speak, it's with my own voice. When I love, it's without fear. And when I look in the mirror, I see someone who may still be healing, but who is no longer hiding. Today, I am free. And that is more than I ever dreamed of.